Bismillah. Okay. This is a very serious academic panel. Get together. This is really a plug. We're going to start a tangent of the Baraka boys called the Angelic Academics. I don't know. All right. So the Baraka boys are a collection of young Muslim influencers, artists, and creatives who have gained a significant following on social media platforms through their YouTube video series and podcasts, which deal with issues facing the Muslim community, the representation of the contemporary lifestyle of Muslim millennials, and all the intricacy that is involved when faith and culture meet modernity to form what has become known to be a third culture. So that's their blurb to describe who are the Baraka boys. I wanted to just take a few minutes to connect this to broader discussions we've been having in this room and in previous conferences. For those of you that have attended some of our previous ones, especially at Northwestern in 2018, where we talked about Islam and globalism in Islam previously. And to connect more specifically with this idea of Afropolitanism, and I just wanted to, this was a slideshow that I showed previously a couple of years ago. You might recognize some of the people here. This was after the release of Black Panther movie, and it was, it kind of struck me on social media, and this was one of the participants is, what can I, so these are all UK Muslims that go to see Black Panther. They say, what can I say? Yesterday we went to see Black Panther and it was a total shutdown. We rolled with over 40 people and represented Black excellence in true Wakanda style. The film was amazing, but more amazing was the representation of us. And so this led to some discussions we had also. Just wanted to, sorry, this is an old, this idea of Afropolitanism, and could we apply this idea to Islamic identities in the West? And of course, this is an idea associated with Chirima Mbembe, but this is the rendition by the Kenyan thinker Simon Kagande. He says in the relevant part, to be Afropolitan is to be connected to noble African communities, nations, and traditions, but it is also to live a life divided across cultures, languages, and states. It is to embrace and celebrate a state of cultural hybridity, to be of Africa and of other worlds at the same time. And so I'm not the only one, but I've also authored an article kind of thinking about, can this idea be applied to Muslim identities in the West, and it's also building on Professor Zacharia's comments last night, that this is a productive cultural category. African Islam in its various iterations, very productive of Muslim identity in the West, whether in America or in the UK and other places. And so what we're witnessing, I mean, we have a really great opportunity here to sort of witness this sort of cultural production in real time. And so that's the sort of framing device, and I've asked them to sort of, in initial comments, so I'm going to introduce them first and have them show you a little bit about what they've done. I've asked them to sort of speak about their relationship with Muslim communities in Africa, and then how that informs their positionality in Western Muslim communities that are, predominantly dominated by Arab and Indo-Pakistani identities. All right, so, right, I did want to introduce everybody very quickly. So Mahamadou Tall is here. He is a law graduate from the United Kingdom after attaining his law degree from East Anglia. He's also traveled widely, Morocco, Egypt, and Mauritania, and he's currently studying Islamic sciences in Azhar University, and he is a descendant, he didn't say it in his bio, of the well-known Sheikh Umar Tall from West Africa. So we're honored to have Baraka. Yeah, Baraka voice. Fahad Rahman is here.
Muslim Millennials.
Yeah.
No, Mohammed Issa, he's the founder of Muslim Millennials.
Okay.
That's an important part.
He's the founder of Muslim Millennial.
I'll speak about that anyway.
You'll speak about that. Okay, great. Fahad Rahman resides in Birmingham, UK. He's a graduate of the University of Birmingham and has a degree in education studies. This is Fahad, sorry, make sure I'm pointing him out directly. He's currently a full-time an Adam program at the Hassanat College. He's attending. Yeah. Great, so also studying Islamic sciences. He's well known, he has a podcast, radio personality, let him talk more about that later, and executive director of The Cave, a community organization in the UK that aims to promote unity, tolerance, love, and peace amongst the Muslim community. Fair enough? Okay, you let me know if I need to add anything. Mohammed Yahya is here. He's an award-winning bilingual rapper, poet, educator, and movie attender, as you saw in the picture. Anything else I should add, or let you talk for later? Okay. Is Khalid, or? Yeah, okay, where is he? There he is at the end, okay, sure. Khalid Sadiq is one of the most recognized Muslim artists across the globe, a YouTuber. You'll see in a minute some of his hits have, well, here you can see here, 1.2 million views on some of his videos. He's a YouTuber, singer, songwriter, and rapper. He combines an array of skills into his portfolio, making him one of the most diverse and talented Muslims today. A proud Muslim of Jamaican, English, and Irish heritage, etc. So he's performed at places like Yale and Oxford, and now Harvard. All right, his brother is here, Omar. I should maybe have started with you first and said it's Omar's brother, but so sorry, he's just first on the list. Is also similarly active in the field of spoken word and poetry, and is currently working on releasing an EP and a book of his works. Faisal Salah is here at the end. Is a multi-talented, internationally acclaimed singer-songwriter, beatboxer, who can best be described as a walking jam session. I don't know, whoever wrote yours is the best.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't you. All right, and so also Ahmed here. Your last name again? Konate. Ahmed Konate is a graduate of Dartmouth College. He's also a playwright, and he will be pursuing his PhD soon. In what field you're interested in?
In African studies.
In African studies, inshallah. Okay. And Mustafa Briggs is a graduate of Arabic and International Relations from the University of Westminster, whose dissertation focused on Arabic literature and literacy in West Africa. He's also started an MA in translation at SOAS, University of London. He's also now studying at Azhar University in Cairo. And he's also had this very successful Beyond Bilal, Black History in Islam lecture series. Then he's toured several well-renowned universities, including this one. Thank you very much. So this is a pretty free-for-all discussion. We're gonna ask each person to talk a little bit about what they do. First, nobody's ever heard of the Baraka Boys before? I show them in my classes, not sure. So those are people raising their hand that have heard of them. The rest of you, I thought it would be important to just show a few quick clips. I've asked them to limit it to 5 minutes total for a few, and Muhammad Yahya is gonna be the DJ here. So you know how to flip between, if you go like this, and then you know how you go to escape, so you can switch between tabs. Yeah.
So,
and then this is full screen.
full screen.
Yeah, so it should be.
Okay, so the first video I'm going to play is a video. It's a video that we created called "Say Mashallah," which is Khalid's original idea, and he invited a few members of the Baraka Boys to take part, such as myself and Carl Gray, who unfortunately is not able to be here, and some of the other members were also present there. Okay.
Mashallah, mashallah. Mashallah, habibi. You gotta get that one, mashallah, one time. Yeah.
When you see me, say mashallah. Look at my ice, look at my life. Price went up, say mashallah. Look at my car, look at my yard. Thanks to Allah, say mashallah. Look at my health, look at my wealth. Man's doing well, say mashallah. Look at the gang, look at my bam. Check my account, say mashallah. Look at the ice, look at my life. Price went up, say mashallah. Look at my car, look at my yard. Thanks to Allah, say mashallah. Look at my health, look at my wealth. Man's doing well, say mashallah. Look at the gang, look at my bam. Check my account, say mashallah. Say mashallah when when you see me. Can't no bear haters pre me. 2 prayers when I step out the yard, man, I need no wish, no genie. Can't no say man them envy. And I know a couple gal them too. So when they ask who's living that blessed life, put it my way, my G, better tell them who. Pray my salat in the morning. Check my phone, that's wifey calling. Tell a baby girl chill, let me stack these meals, give me 2 or 3 years, man's balling. Certain man are asking how. Them money ain't got no faith. Cover just last year, I was pushing out rental. What's next year when I'm whipping that brief? Look at my ice, look at my life. Price went up, say mashallah. Look at my car, look at my yard. Thanks to Allah, say mashallah. Look at my health, look at my wealth. Man's doing well, say mashallah. Look at the gang, look at my bam. Check my account, say mashallah.
Sorry, so this is just to give you guys a little vibe of what,
I'm gonna clap for that one. I'm gonna clap for that one.
a little vibe of what the track is about.
I don't know if Americans can appreciate it.
We also wanted to ensure that we kind of featured a spiritual leader who's Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse, and I mean I mentioned him on the song, and we also wanted to put a picture of that, and it's so interesting that after that video was released, the amount of people that started contacting us and asking us like, who's this person? And we wanted to do that to purposely create and initiate conversations. So, okay.
Team, mashallah, Baraka boys in the facade. We love the Rasulullah, we're praising Allah. I jump on the game, so I'm raising a bar. Salawat on my breath, Arabian nude on my neck. By Niasse I rep, I'm dropping that zikr, still getting them checks. Mashallah, alhamdulillah for Mustafa, Habibullah, the one I honor when I write these bars, the one I follow when I make salah. I don't worship idol stars, idolize your idols now. Praise my Lord, to him I ask, stay grateful for the things I have. Yeah.
Look at my ice, look at my...
It's right at the end.
Okay, so
there now.
where's
There.
okay? So if you
Play.
so it's very subtle, but sometimes that's enough to kind of initiate conversations, and that's ultimately what we wanted to do. Okay, cool.
Yeah, baby, right?
This one. Okay, so so the next video that
You can sing along.
yeah. If you know the song,
If you know the song, sing along.
so
But you know why Ya Habibi is significant for us as a movement is because it was Rabiul Awal, it was Mawlid, and we didn't have enough money to go to Senegal to celebrate the Mawlid. So we decided to go from the UK. Tickets to Morocco were £25. That's like, I don't know, $40. Yeah. So we all organized the trip to decide that we were going to ziyara Sheikh Ahmed Tijani and celebrate the Mawlid in the Zawiya in Fez. And we created a WhatsApp group to organize the trip. And because we were going to get Baraka, we called it Baraka Boys. Yeah. So that's the beginning of the movement. And when we arrived after the Mawlid, then a videographer flew in and Khalid recorded the video for this song. So you can see the video is filmed in Fez, in ancient city of Fez. And yeah, if you know it, sing along.
صلي وسلم دائما على محمد يا حبيبي يا حبيبي مولاي صلي وسلم دائما على محمد يا حبيبي يا حبيبي. See a light, yeah, we need that. Nur Ain, I can see that. Or maybe not, but I want to. Yo Mukayama, you're the one that I'ma run to. See your air, yeah, I breathe that. Mu'mineen, ya Allah, I'ma reach that. See this tune that I made just for you. I wanna see you in my dream for some feedback.
hopefully you guys are gonna get the live version.
Yes.
Play the Kofi TV one next.
Which one? This one.
So not only Morocco, but we also did ziyara to Senegal. So it's like the movement, essentially, not everybody's a musician, not everybody's an artist. Some of us are aspiring academics. Some of us are social activists. And we all came together initially just because of our love for Islam and our love of Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse, essentially, was what united us. And our visiting places in Senegal kind of exposed other young Muslims in the West to this spiritual tradition in West Africa that we all benefit from and we're all a part of, but not many people seem to know about. So this was, when we went to Senegal, a local YouTube channel called Kosi TV, which is based in Medina Bay, approached us to record a documentary about our visit because we showed up with about 17 young Westerners in Medina Bay and like we were recording music videos on the top of the mosque, and it was crazy. We caused a bit of a stir. So yeah, this is an extract of the documentary, inshallah. You guys.
And the people never see what your love has done for me. It brought me this inner peace, and raised my heart when I was weak. Until the day we die. We'll keep your love alive. And even when hardship comes by, your love, it taught us to smile. Tell them, 'cause where it may be a bye. So we ain't ever gonna cry. We got that love deep inside. And it'll make our spirits rise. Marhaba Nabi, marhaba. Hey, marhaba Rasulullah.
I think you also get a live version as well of that.
Yeah, you're gonna get. You guys are gonna get a live version of that too. Your video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Which one? Black Gold?
Is that your song?
That's your song, bro.
Your song, bro.
I mean, video is there's Black Man Strain. We
That's
came.
coming up now.
Okay. So this was this was a video that was shot in Senegal in Medina by. It was actually by a really dope Mexican American director who lives in LA, and I really wanted him to capture like just the beauty of the unity and the brotherhood in Medina Bay. So some of the elements were shot during Eid, the Eid prayer, but anyway.
Truthfully, you couldn't be further from the truth. See, they force-fed us lies in order to control. We were deep beneath our skin, embedded in my genes. Lies of rich history tells the great kings. Destined to survive, better yet to shine his light. Believe me when I tell you, I'm proud to be alive. We came.
And this one?
Yeah. And then aside from the artists who, mashallah, are all amazing, productive and creative people, we also have a podcast. So our podcast was literally just us. One day, Khalid, we were having a conversation, interesting conversation as we always do when we get together. And he sat down and he said, you know what? It would be interesting for us if we recorded our conversations and made a podcast, because the way that we feel about certain issues and our experience, issues within Islam and our experience as young Muslims have all contributed to like the reason why we're such a close-knit community of friends. And so we decided to put them on YouTube just to see if anybody else kind of had the same mindset as us or thought the same way about us or going through the same experiences as us. And just through 5 episodes, we generated over 1 million views on YouTube collectively. So yeah, alhamdulillah, this is a section of our pod. This is the very first episode of the podcast, and Khalid kind of explains exactly why we started it and what it's about. So yeah. Press play. No, from the beginning, sorry. Don't know how it got there.
To introduce, basically, like we all went to Morocco together, we did Ziyara, and it kind of formed from a WhatsApp group.
It is the WhatsApp group.
It's the WhatsApp group, Baraka Boys. Obviously, it started to increase as we started to do more Ziyara around the world. We went to Senegal recently, Mauritania, Morocco. We've got many more places to go, inshallah. But this is basically what it formed upon. You know, people, the youth trying to get together with a common cause, one of, you know, getting to know who they really are and how that kind of plays in today's society. I don't want to make it too formal because we have some amazing conversations when we're out and we're traveling, and I thought, yo, if people could benefit from that and they can hear that, then that's going to be amazing. And here we are today. First podcast, inshallah. Forgive us if anything goes.
know what I'm getting
I don't even forgive us if.
Okay.
Yes,
That's an intro.
Mind, just to go, maybe start with you, Khaled, just to give in your own words, like what you. I know I gave you some introduction, but one of the interesting things about, we call it a movement, this collective, is the fact that you're all interested in different things, but yet you come together around certain common interests. So if you could just kind of explain just one by one what your kind of distinctive cultural expression is, and I don't know if you want to take this question about at the same time how you connected personally to Muslim African communities and how that forms your identity back in the UK.
Hi, my name is Khalid Sadiq. Growing up, I was born Muslim, but both my parents are converts. In England, in the UK, like a predominantly Indo-Pakistani influence of the religion, and it's a beautiful thing as well because that's inherently like what kind of brought Islam to the UK. But it did come with its problems, i.e. the cultural identity issues of me, growing up believing that I was never like a true Muslim. I was just like a black person following a religion that really wasn't meant for me. And growing up, having Muslim friends that were, mainly again either Indian or Pakistani, it was hard for me to kind of feel that I belonged, or that me as a mixed race boy growing up, who I could look to as a role model. My father wasn't really around, so there was no one for me to kind of identify with. So now, at the age of 26, or when did we meet up? When I was like 24? 24, yeah. Yeah, just even meeting someone like Mustafa, the amount, the wealth of knowledge that he has about the deen. I'll admit, when I first met him, and the way he was talking, I was like, who's this guy? Like, a black person, and he knows all this about the deen. Like, now what's going on here? Because astaghfirullah, but that's the way I'd been kind of conditioned, and like, Islam could only be given to me if as a guy was Arab, or he was Sheikh Abu this or something like that. It could never be from anywhere from Africa or anything like that. But alhamdulillah, Briggs really opened up my mind and shown me, obviously literally took me to West Africa and shown me the how far Islam really spread. And it's really taught me like who I really belong to. And that's not to say that I don't associate with like Pakistanis or Indians or that. But now through going to West Africa, I understood the I don't know if globality is the word, but like the globalness of Islam, like it really is for everywhere. Even though it came from like the Arab world, it was really meant for like the whole of humanity. And seeing the wealth of knowledge of Islam from West Africa kind of helped me identify, better as a black Muslim, and having confidence, to make music like that, which doesn't normally go down too well in certain communities, but it's normally in the black community where it's received the best. So it's been integral to kind of my identity as a black Muslim growing up, and that's why I choose to show it, because I know there's going to be a lot of other Muslims out there who do have these identity issues. So if seeing it on YouTube or they're on their phone or whatever, and that kind of movement has started. So it's kind of been the whole going to West Africa and experiencing that culture has been integral to kind of me identifying as as a black Muslim.
My name is Amadou Kunete. I am a recent graduate from Dartmouth College. I majored in African American Studies and computer science, a little bit dabbled in that. But my family is from Guinea and Sierra Leone, and so just to answer that question, so what I'm really interested in is in stories, is in storytelling. And the reason why I think is very much connected back to my attempt to answer this question. It was, for me, I come from a Muslim family, but I didn't grow up practicing Islam. My mother is Christian, and in Sierra Leone particularly, I grew up with a very multi-faith experience. But I took Tariqa with Professor Khan at his house a few years ago, and just to share a little bit about that experience for me, I had a friend who was the one who introduced me to Professor Khan, who was a Pakistani man, and he comes from a family of Qadris. which is the tariqa, and Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. And so I became extremely fascinated and interested in Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. And I remember my hesitancy to take the tariqa with Professor Khan, simply because I was like, how am I going to leave Abdul Qadir al-Jilani for some African guy named Sheikh Ibrahim Nias? And like, that's literally what it was for me. I would be with Professor Khan every week. I would come to dhikr, but I was like, I can't leave this. This is, it's West African. Like, they don't know as much. Despite being West African myself, and despite coming from a family of scholars myself, my grandfather was the Mufti of Kankan. And so but my father passed away early, so I lived with my mother, who later became Christian. So I grew up going to church. But having this legacy and still having this hesitancy to reclaim my inheritance. And so that's particularly why I'm interested in storytelling, because I think for people, Black people in general, who the archive is inaccessible and our stories were not written in books. That's what I say. I say our stories are not written in books. My body is my archive. And that's why performance and stories are particularly interesting, fascinating to me, because I've always felt Muslim, even when I didn't practice Islam. And so I'm fascinated by how I'm going to cultivate stories and tell stories whereby people can have it be a means to access and retrieve and get their inheritance. On Instagram, my name is Son of Mansa, simply because I think is an attempt to claim that inheritance of Mansa Musa. So yeah, that's me a little bit.
As long as you share the wealth of Mansa Musa, I'm here for it. But yeah, your two answers were really good. It felt like you rehearsed them both. That was amazing. Hopefully I can do as good. But my story, obviously my background is the same as my brother's, Jamaican and Irish. My story was pretty much the same as my brother's growing up, until I started to, and even like the fact of this whole, us all sitting together, how we was all brought together. If you ever do get the chance to get the full story of how we came together, it is literally, in my eyes, it's a miracle. How everyone, like how I met Amadou when we performed at Yale, and how he came up to me and he said, "Oh, do you want to do dhikr together?" He thought I was a Salafi, so he thought I was going to tell him to go away, and it was bid'ah. But then he was like, I remember he was hiding his tasbih. He was like, "Bro, you want to go do some dhikr?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, definitely." But that's obviously later on in the story. But yeah, my whole relationship with Islam, I didn't really like Islam at the beginning because of how it was presented to me from Muslims in the UK. I don't know how it is in America, but in the UK it's very, very different. They are not the nicest of people. But so the thing is, the way I was I wanted to like connect with my religion, but I didn't see any good like representatives of that. So again, that led me to do a lot of things in my life that I'm not too proud of. And I got, like, for example, the fact that I'm giving a talking to you guys at Harvard. I was kicked out of college when I was 17. So, like, again, Allah, like, just let him be. He's the best of the planet, you know what I mean? But yeah, so obviously I got a basketball scholarship to a college that was quite far away. Obviously I was by myself. I didn't have no religion, like, around me. It was a very, like, predominantly white neighborhood. And it was quite a racist area in England. But it was, again, like, I remember I got into a lot of bad things. I was making money in a lot of bad ways. And I got into a type of state where it was like, I had a lot of money. I had a lot of girls based on the basketball. I had a lot of, like in terms of fame, but I still had this emptiness inside me. And I was like, I have no idea. Like, I have everything in the world that people spend their whole life looking for. And I said, and I'm still empty. And I was like, I don't know what to do. So that led me into go into a very deep depression, leading up to where I almost tried to take my life, which I'm about to do a poem later on. So that was interesting. But that's how I was introduced to Mustafa Briggs. I slept around Mamadou's house once. We was talking. I told him my story, and he was like, I've got my friend. He's out. Where was you at the time?
Nigeria.
He was in Nigeria because the connection was disgusting. Because I was trying to FaceTime him, and it was like breaking up every 3 seconds, and I'm trying to tell him my story.
Can I interject? So, obviously, my father's Nigerian, so if I had let this go, I would never hear it, the end of it. I was in the countryside in Minna, so Minna as a state, just if you've been to Nigeria and you know the road to get to Minna,
It's not a
how
road.
difficult it is, you'll understand the state of the internet connection in the time. But yeah,
Okay, I wasn't saying shots of the country. I was just simply anyway
Go
because
ahead.
I'm trying to tell him my life, tell him I'm lost, tell him I'm like again I'm in depression. I was like, yo, help me out. And then he gave me some dhikrs and told me to do this and introduced me to Papa Maki, which I met on my birthday. He took me out to Senegal. We was there for like 2 months almost, and all of this. And when the Islam they gave me, a very tasawwuf-based Islam, which focused on the spirit, which focused on the soul, the essence of Islam, of who we are, and the fact that it connected with so many other philosophers that I know and other religions. I was like, this is the Islam that was meant for me, and I can find myself in this, and I can still be myself as well. And that was just one of the most beautiful things. And again, I thank Mustafa Briggs for that and Momadou. Yeah, so yeah. So,
Your name.
oh, that's good. No, Umar Sadiq. Yeah, yeah.
1, 2. Okay, cool. Okay, salam alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Mohammed Yahya. I am a rapper, a spoken word artist, community activist, mentor, and interfaith programming officer. So I was born in Mozambique, Southeast Africa.
And the uncle of the group.
Yes, and proudly the uncle of the group. So I was born in Mozambique, Southeast Africa. Unfortunately, I had to flee my home country at the age of 2 because of a very destructive civil war that left more than 2 million people dead and more than 5 million people displaced. A civil war that lasted for 16 years. So my parents and my siblings, we all fled to Lisbon, and that's where I was raised in between the ages of 2 and 10 years old. So growing up in Portugal, there was no representation whatsoever of people who looked like me, sounded like me, or anything. My sister, who's only 6 years older than me, still remembers when her school teachers in primary school, this is in the early 80s, would teach her that Africans were only 3/4 human being. I was the only African boy in the school, so I was constantly trying to learn about myself. That took me on various journeys, including like searching for God, trying to understand myself. So at the age of 13, I decided to become a born-again Christian. By the time I was 16 years old, I moved away from Christianity, looked into Buddhism, Rastafarianism, and other isms. So roughly around 14 and a half years ago, my friend invited me to travel to Gambia. For me, this was a great opportunity because it's the first time that I was ever going to return to the continent which I was born in. Even though it was in Mozambique, I was like reconnecting with this continent. At the time, I didn't know that Gambia is it 95 or 98% Muslim?
it's 90-something.
Yeah, 90-something% Muslim. And I remember that trip literally changed my life because I remember once coming out of a nightclub and hearing something which I thought was an after party, and then found out that was the call to prayer for the morning prayer. I went to research, and that hit me because I was like, wow, whilst I'm coming out of a nightclub, people are like actually waking up and going to pray to their Lord. And that just made me really think about what I was doing with my life. After that trip, I returned to UK, I cut my dreads off, and I embraced Islam. Being a Muslim, I was still trying to understand and find my identity. And until I came across a Ghanaian scholar, who happened to be of the Tijani Tariqa. I was initiated into the Tijani Tariqa, and then later on renewed it with the current Imam of Medina Bay, who's Imam Sheikh Tijani Sise, who is my spiritual teacher. And I went to live with him for a few months and regularly go there. So seeing how Imam and a lot of the scholars in Medina Bay, even though they're scholars and they have their students, and in some shape they're leaders, they're also the biggest servants of the people. And that really inspired me to return back to UK and try to apply some of those things, like seeing my teacher feed hundreds of people every day, encouraged me to start a new project called Feeding Folk, which has been going on for 2.5 years. And every 2 weeks now, initially started off as monthly, but now every two weeks, we feed 150 to 200 homeless people around London.
but this is like super small in comparison to what our teachers do. And just listening to the messages, the things that they teach, the way that they live that lifestyle, that really had an impact in my lifestyle, trying to become a better person, trying to incorporate some of these teachings into my music whilst trying to keep it still universal. So that's a little bit about me, inshallah. Thank you.
Hey, assalamu alaikum. So my name is Mustafa Briggs. My story with Islam began, I would say, same as Muhammad Yahya in the Gambia. So ethnically, my father is Efik and Igbo from the southern region of Nigeria, so he's Catholic, but I didn't meet my father in person until the age of 20. I was raised by a single mother and my grandmother. My grandmother's Gambian, and my mother's half Gambian, half Sierra Leonean, and she's of the Creole or Aku ethnic group, meaning they're the descendants of liberated Africans who returned to Freetown. So my mother as well, her whole side of the family are mostly Christian. She has being Gambia, she has a few cousins who married Muslim men, and I have a few Muslim cousins. And later on in life, I discovered my grandmother's grandmother was actually Wolof and had migrated into Gambia. But essentially, growing up, I was a young black Christian boy in inner city London. And so growing up, obviously, my grandmother was the one that played the most influential part in my life. She raised me, she used to cook for me, she used to teach me, she used to read to me, etc. And she always used to instill in me from a young age to be very proud of the fact that I was African and very proud of the fact that I was Gambian. Anywhere she traveled, because I was the youngest grandchild and I was born the year she retired from the UN. So anywhere she traveled in the world as a child, she used to take me with her. So like by the age of 2, I had gone to Italy, France, Gambia, all of these places with my grandma. And I was always being dressed in African clothes, and I was always being told, yeah, you know, you're African and be proud of it, which ironically, because we're liberated Africans, I never spoke an African language. We spoke Creole, which is a dialect of English. And we all had English names. So my grandma's name is Mary Ann Roberts, and all my family, our relatives are all Williams, Jones, Roberts, etc. But I remember growing up, going to church, and I was going to African church. So, you know, seeing other African people, I thought Islam, I didn't know that Islam was a religion that was native to West African culture. Growing up, I always just assumed black people were Christian, Arabs and Asians were Muslims, until I went to Gambia for the first time that I can remember, and I was 6 years old. And when I was 6 years old, it was, we got to the house, my grandma was cooking breakfast, bacon, eggs, etc. And I have no siblings, I'm an only child. So my friends were the staff in the house. So there was a maid, there was a driver, there was a security guard, and they were my friends. So I was chilling with the maid and I was talking to her, and then my grandma called me for breakfast, and it was bacon and eggs. And I said, okay, can Awa eat breakfast with me? And my grandma said, no, Awa can't eat this, she's Muslim. And I looked at her, I said, what's Muslim? What does that mean? And she said, oh, you know, they're another religion. They believe in all the prophets we have, like, because I used to go to Sunday school. They believe in Jesus and Muhammad and Moses, but they have an extra one called Muhammad that we don't follow. And they don't eat pork. So in my head, I was just thinking how strange it was that people didn't like bacon. But being in Gambia started to open my eyes to think, okay, so there's this thing called Islam and there's this thing called Muslims. So I'd hear the adhan 5 times a day from my neighborhood. I'd see people, you know, doing dhikr in the street. I would, it was Eid, so it was Eid al-Adha. So my grandmother's best friend, who was Muslim, invited us to her house, and I saw them, you know, slaughter a sheep and da-da-da. And I kept on asking questions. So when I returned to England, I kept on researching Islam. And then around the age of 10, 11, I had already decided that Islam makes the most sense for me to practice as a religion. Just ideologically, the emphasis on monotheism, etc., really appealed to me, and it answered questions that were left unanswered to me in Sunday school. And then as I started to look into West African history specifically and realized that the only reason why my family and my ethnic group were Christian was because they were enslaved, and due to the efforts of colonizers and, you know, British imperialism is what brought Islam to my part, what brought Christianity to my part of the world and directly affected me and my family. I thought to myself, well, if I'm from West Africa and the majority of the empires, like the Mali Empire, the Songhai Empire, etc., were all Muslim empires, it makes sense for me to be Muslim. So then from there, I returned to Gambia at the age of 12, and this is what really changed my shift. So I had already decided as a child that Islam is the religion for me. When I grow up and I'm free to, make my own decisions, I'm going to become Muslim. So I returned to Gambia and I knew quite a lot about Islam. I had taught myself the Fatiha, I was engaging, I knew about the 5 pillars, etc. But I'm looking around Gambia and on every taxi and in every shop and on people's houses and people's windows, I'm seeing the pictures of this man with a big turban and big eyes and a nice beard, and they're writing Sheikh al-Islam on the picture. And so I said to my grandma, who's this man and why is his sticker everywhere? And she said, it's Banyas, he's a Marabu from Senegal. And people put his picture on stuff because they think it brings them good luck. So I was like, okay, that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense because they wrote Sheikh al-Islam, which means he's the leader of Islam. But how can he be the leader of Islam? And I've never heard of him. So she said, you know what? My jeweler is a follower of Banyas. I'll take you to him. Or my next door neighbor, because she grew up in Banjul, and the house that she grew up in was next to the Zawiya of one of Sheikh Ibrahim Nias's most well-known followers in Gambia, Sheikh Omar Faye. And so my grandma grew up with his children, and she knew that they were Muslim. She knew that they followed Baye. So she took me to their house. She showed me the mosque, and then she connected me with people who'd answer my questions. And so as a kid, curiosity, I returned to England, and around the age of 13, I started to send emails to Sheikh Hassan Sise, who was the grandson of Sheikh Ibrahim and the Imam of Medina Baye at the time. And so he, in all of his emails, he would always answer my questions. He gave me his personal phone number. I'd call him and talk to him. And one day he messaged me and he said, my younger brother, Sheikh Mahi Sise, is coming to England. I want you to go and meet him, and I'm making dua for you that you become a Muslim. So in my head, I was thinking, my mom will kill me if I become Muslim. Let me just, I'll just go and say hi and ask some questions. I go. But when I got there, after sitting down with the Sheikh and having a conversation with him, I took Shahada. I became Muslim at the age of 13, and he named me Muhammad al-Mustafa. And I continued to maintain contact with Sheikh Hassan. I would call him on the phone, I'd send him emails, etc. And then he initiated me into the Tijani Tariqa before he passed away in 2008. And so I found myself as a new Muslim in a new community of African Muslims who practiced a version of Islam that not just had emphasis on the outward ritualistic aspects of the religion, but had a deep emphasis on cultivating spiritual practices and spiritual knowledge and intimate knowledge of Allah, which was something that, I never really heard about in any other communities. Like the first thing we learned, being a new Muslim and being Tijani was you have to know Allah. You have to really know who Allah is. You have to do dhikr every day. You have to read the Quran. Make sure you can read the Quran and understand the poetry. And around the age of 15, I went through a process which is a spiritual, what they call the spiritual training or the tarbiyah at the age of 15. So that was instilled in me from a young age. And as I grew up, I started to travel to Medina Baye in 2009. So I was about 15, 16 at the time. And Sheikh Ibrahim Nias's son, Sheikh Makki Nias, always used to visit England. So I'd always spend time with him and with Imam Sheikh Tijani Sise anytime he came, and with Sheikh Mahi and all of the grandsons of Sheikh Ibrahim. So that was the community that I grew up in. And I used to have interaction with other British communities, but I learned Quran with the with the daughter of Imam Sheikh Tijani Sise, who was living in the UK at the time. I studied fiqh with them. I studied everything I needed as a Muslim. And then interacting with other Muslims, I realized that there was a depth and richness to my Islam that a lot of people were unaware existed within the religion. The emphasis on not just outward Islam, but on cultivating iman, deep belief, and ihsan, spiritual excellence through ma'rifah, knowledge of Allah. And so that started to attract a lot of curiosity from all of my friends, and that's how the movement kind of started from there. So I was telling them that I go on ziyaras, I visit the sheikhs in Senegal, in Mauritania. I go to the Zawiya in Fez. And so that's how we ended up organizing the trip in Fez. And everybody came on the trip. There were about 17 of us. Mm-hmm. And by the time we'd come back, about half of them had taken the tariqah themselves. So they entered into the Tijani spiritual path. And all of the people here, they've all taken the tariqah. Most of them have done tarbiyah as well. So it's just an interesting and example of how, as Professor Zachary Wright was saying, African Islam had influenced global communities outside of Africa and people who are not even not only African descent, but not just of African descent. So yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name's Fahad. I just want to take off from where Briggs just left. So shortly after we had the Ziyarah to Fez, we went back, I think, one more time before the cave.
Yeah.
So we went back one more time, and because of our interaction with other Muslims, and now we had seen a different type of Islam being practiced that people in the UK were unaware of. We went to Morocco, we went to Medina Bay. I think Medina Bay is where everything changed. We realized that these people don't just practice Islam, but it's something that they live, they breathe it. When they eat, it's Islam. When they sleep, it's Islam. When they talk, it's Islam. Everything that they do is Islam. But it's in a very subtle way. From the outside looking in, you would never be able to know that, oh, these people, their entire lives revolve around the religion. And I thought from the conversations that we had had with people who weren't a part of that community in the UK, this was something that they'd never experienced. And I noticed and realized with some of my friends that a lot of people were disconnecting from the religion and from God, because the way that we had been taught growing up was it's a very black and white way of living. This is Islam. This is what you're allowed to do, which is not much. And this is what you're not allowed to do. And all of the stuff that you're not allowed to do is everything that you want to do. So it's literally a case of, okay, I'm either going to practice Islam or I'm not going to do it. Because there's no in between. You can't have fun as a Muslim. This is the way that we were taught. And if you do, you're going to be punished for it. So I remember the night that me and Mustafa had a conversation on the phone. We said, why don't we bring this type of Islam to the people in the UK? Like, how hard can it be? Let's just set something up. And so one of my friends has got like a little hall that he hires out. We said, why don't we call him and get it done and hire the hall, get some of our guys to perform, bring a sheikh that we know to talk. It was Mustafa actually who spoke on the first one. He is a sheikh.
We got real sheikhs to come.
And let's just show the people the Islam that we know. So we started it in January this year. It was a massive success. Like, we couldn't feel like people were waiting outside in the car park trying to get in. And it's been like that ever since. So from that, we do monthly gatherings. There's always different performers that come down. They perform. We have a sheikh that gives lectures. We have workshops for children as well. Khalid's done one on creative writing. Muhammad Yahya is going to do one on hip hop and Islam. We're going to start. Oh yeah, and then the first one, we had the Pakistani national TV come down and record it because it was something new, and it did cause a little stir because the UK are not used to, especially the UK, and Birmingham especially, are not even used to, having an Islamic gathering where men and women are sat next to each other or in the same hall where they can see each other. So a lot of people didn't like it, and that was cool because the response that we gave is that this is not a place for you then, because you guys, and as bad as that sounds, you guys have the places that you want. If you guys want to go into a mosque and you don't want to see the opposite gender, you have that. But this is for the people who just want God and they can't get to him through your platform. They can't reach him. This is why I often joke with a sister who comes to and volunteers for the organization, because the first time that I met her, she was drunk. And now whenever we speak, like, she's always trying to bring it back to God somehow. And I'm always I mock her for it because I'm like, yo, is this really you now? Like, literally, like 8 months ago, you were I couldn't even understand what you were saying. That's how drunk you were. So we decided that was why we did what we did. That's why we created the organization, and almost all of it was based on the experience and the Islam that we saw in Medina Bay in Senegal and in Mauritania and in the Gambia. So that's basically what I do and the relationship to West Africa.
I want to clap for you as well. My name is Mamadou Tar. Excuse me if I'm wincing. I just brought my glasses on my way here, so I can't actually see anything. So forgive me. I'm just like, who's here? Less pressure now.
There's no one here.
I'm an empty room. I kind of feel like if you look back in your life, I read a quote recently. It said that everything, whilst the decree of Allah is happening to you, everything you do takes you to the decree of Allah. So I thought to myself, looking back on my life, I look back and I feel like all decisions that I've taken and made have put me where I am today and put me how I see the world today. So for example, I remember being 14. Before again, my parents. I'm from the Gambia. My parents are practicing, but it was never forced upon us, on ourselves. So I didn't grow up praying. I didn't grow up fasting. It wasn't a big. I mean, maybe fasting or just just come home and not just have dinner with the family, So when I get to 14, and these guys can kind of tell you the way I kind of grew up. I grew up in London on a typical estate on the hood. I wanted to be a rapper. I got into all kind of madnesses. Then then my best friend was stabbed to death, so about 13. So my parents said to me, no, we're moving you to Birmingham now. We're going to start a new life for you. You're going to start. And I was like, what the hell? I don't know anyone here. But I said, okay, let's go for it. So at 14 now, I was heavily inspired by Barack Obama to go into politics. So I joined. So I thought, I'm going to, in legacy of my friend, I'm going to start something, of a knife crime. So alhamdulillah, I was successful in that election. But whilst the election happened, I went to a very predominantly white school. So I was going around getting votes from different classes. And then one of the kid goes to me, oh, I want to look for the white person to vote for on the sheet. And I said, why? He goes, I said, but me trying to be diplomatic. I'm going from a hood guy trying to be like a guy in diplomatic now. I'm like, okay, cool. So let me try and engage you intellectually now, yeah? Let me try and say to you, okay, cool. So why won't you vote for me? I'm British too. And he goes to me, well, if a dog's born in the stable, it doesn't make him a horse. So I said to him, I was a bit like, oh wow, this is what. So then I was like, okay. So at this time I thought, and then bearing in mind, so I flipped out, got in trouble, and then my teacher said to me, another story. He goes to me, Mamadou, you can't be like this. Be more like Martin. Don't be like Malcolm. And I was like, so I don't know how it is in America, but in the UK we have this false dichotomy that Martin is this preachy, happy guy, and he didn't want in trouble with no one. While Malcolm X is extreme radical and he's like a terrorist. Yeah, that's what I got taught in school. So me being the skeptic that I am, said no, I'm not going to let that happen. Let me read about Malcolm X myself. So I read his autobiography first at the age of 15, 16. Then I thought, oh wow, I want to embrace this proper message of Islam, because Islam, you cannot detach his activism from his Islam, even though it's not it wasn't intrinsic to each other. However, you can't detach it from it. So I thought, okay, cool. So I started practicing Islam. My first contact with the religion now so now I'm going through heavy militant. I'm heavily pro-black. Okay, now how does it match to my Islam? My first encounter of Islam was the kind of neo-Salafi movement, the neo-Wahhabi movement, and they were just trying to. Honestly, what you find with a lot of black people who go to these groups, whilst they have many benefits to them, the negatives are your culture no longer exists. You can no longer be a black person in that, because why? We are the ummah now. We're the ummah, even though I have my own kind of issues with this kind of false concept of the ummah anyway. But we are the ummah. There's no black, and they have the famous saying, "There's no racism in Islam. Bilal was black," Or they say to you, look at the Prophet ﷺ's final message. It was about But I said, yeah, that's true. But how come today, there's so much racism that exists in these communities? So I was like, this version of Islam doesn't really do it for me. It just can't run, basically. So I thought, let me look into Rastafarianism, let me look to other kind of things. Where can I be a proud black person that is a lover of God? Then I come down, asked my parents, I said, my parents, what madhab do we follow? I didn't know nothing about madhab. And then he goes, a school of thought. Oh, we're Maliki. I was like, okay, what's Maliki? I started researching it. I found out about Sheikh Uthman Dan Fodio, and I was like, oh, wow. I started looking into different, my own ancestor, Sheikh Umar Forty-Tal. I was like, oh, wow, there's then there's a whole legacy. Then I came across Sheikh Ibrahim Niass's pictures, and I see a big, African man wearing less African clothes. African like to be so eccentric and like to be, when African people dress, we're making a statement out here. You're like, okay, this is how I'm letting everyone know how I'm dressing. I see Sheikh Ibrahim with heads of state, with Gamal Abdel Nasser, the leader of Egypt, with General Mao, the leader of communist China. I'm like, but he's wearing all these African clothes. Like, no matter where he went, he was so proud and he's so assured of himself that no one could take away from him. And I thought, this is the guy I want to be like. I want to be a scholar, but I want to be a guy who's proud of where I'm from and unapologetically black in my culture and my expression of that. So that's how it took me here. That's what brought me to Mustafa. Bearing in mind, I came from a Salafi background, so when Mustafa's telling me about Tariqa, I'm like, nah, that's all bid'ah, fam. I'm not all down with that. But when he goes to me, the quote of it's a hadith, even though people have an issue with the authenticity of the hadith, but وَمَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ فَقَدْ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. Whosoever knows himself knows his Lord. And I thought, what does it mean to know yourself? And then speaking to Mustafa, he would never, again, what I love about Mustafa is that he would never say to me, become Tijani, do it. It's not like a cult. It was like, you know what? If you want intimate knowledge of Allah, this is where I got it from, and it's not for everybody. And then after so many years, I thought, this is the path I want to take. I went to Medina Bay and I saw, again, the people there as well. They speak Arabic, but they're not Arab. They're Senegalese people. Yeah? So that kind of informs the way I see my faith, and that's how we came together.
Hello. My name is Faisal Abdurrahman Salim Abdullah Muhammad Majid. I just felt like giving the whole thing. Yeah. My journey's a little bit different, but similar in the same way. The thing that connects me to all of these people is we kind of took the road less traveled. For myself, my father was incarcerated when I was about 14 years of age, so I come from a Somali Yemeni heritage. My father was quite a public person, but with that absence, I needed to find a way to develop myself in the world. So when I got to about 17 years of age, I needed to find an identity. I wanted to find something that made me understand who I am better. And I just had a love for whatever maintains and sustains life. And religion was a way for me to understand that better. So I dove into Islam, and it was the most inspiring, most beautiful thing. When I first started practicing, I saw it as this space with just this globalized, infinite colors of expression, just praising something beautiful. But as I started to practice it, I found one specific mosque to learn in. And coming from a Somali background, I found no attachment to my heritage. It was only an Arab association. I never felt my actual culture in that. My culture felt like it disappeared a long time ago. And the more I stayed within these communities, I was a person who would sing. So I would sing about the experiences that brought me joy. And faith did that for me. And that propelled me into different spaces and different environments. And I got to see many different localized formats of the same religion, which just confused me because my school of thought was telling me everybody else is wrong, you're right. But then the more I began practicing, this kept on continuing till nothing made sense anymore. And I went through a really difficult period when I think I was about 17 or 18 and I joined a group of black Muslims, black revert Muslims in a city, just trying to express a closeness to God. It was called Roadside to Islam Project. And at that time, the community in London, I think it was very race-orientated. We got a massive backlash. We got a massive backlash for expressing our culture simultaneously with our faith. And that backlash was so strong for me as a 17-year-old at the time. It was a trauma that stayed with me. And I kept far away from like active community engagement. I would come, I would share my heart and my art with communities, but I was unable to stay and be amongst them because I couldn't find home. And then something really interesting happened. I always moved around from different group to group to try and understand something. But Sufis, I had never gone like really into and understanding that process. And then by the grace of God, I met these lovely human beings and we were invited to experience the Islam in Senegal. And that to this day still leaves my heart speechless because I was watching people carrying their faith without it needing to be a banner, without it being a means of self-identification. People were just grounded in themselves and their faith was their expression. It was part of who they were. It wasn't anything else. And when it's normalized and naturalized, I felt something purer than I've felt before. And that stayed with me. It gave me an understanding that I don't need to externalize my faith. I don't need to look outwards. There's something internal. And through the practice of self-intimacy and connecting to something deeper, something comes about. And I'm still to this day trying to uncover it with language, but I find it in the softness of my heart and the heart I hold with my brothers. So yeah, that's the journey. And the work that I do, it's imbued in everything I do. I work with children with disabilities, and with my artwork, we do unblocking creativity and we do community organization. We just, from that same space, invite that same goodness because Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse is a model of a human being that to this day still leaves me speechless because our only reference is that of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who did these incredible feats and made these amazing things, created this community, but the association is 1400 years ago. But to go to somewhere where it's still within 50 years of this person still being alive, there are people who witnessed it, there is the effect of a community, there's effect of a culture, there's a whole environment with love living, and that's from a human being making that effort. It showed me that human beings can make an effort and we can connect ourselves to something deeper than the worry of everyone else. And that we continue to imbue in what we do. And hopefully we can just be ambassadors for that truth. Yeah, so that's how that carried on with what we were doing. Thank you.
So I really want to thank everybody for bringing to life the lots of the traditions that we're here studying and continuing to learn from ourselves, and more personally to thank you for sharing the beauty of the human condition and things that you've all been experiencing. Beautiful stories and touching. So we have about 10 minutes before they're going to take a quick break, check the mics, and do a little performance. So we do want to open it up for questions. Yeah. Do you need a microphone?
I think they deserve a round of applause again. I'm fascinated with their story. Let me put it that way, is that sometimes last year, we had to do the graduation ceremony of our university. And I discovered that we had some youth who were very creative, singing, drumming, rapping. But again, as the head of the institution, I tried to bring some people from elsewhere to do the thing. And some Salafi came up and said, no, this is an Islamic something. You don't allow this kind of thing in this environment. And I said, well, if you prevent people from exercising their potentials or realizing their potential, of course, they go to the negative side. Mm-hmm. So what I'm now trying to find out from you is it possible for you to be invited to Nigeria? How that will be done?
Yes. Point us in the direction.
Yes, and that is one thing. And I think I very much want to be an inspiration to the younger ones. The world is saturated with negative tendencies. If you don't allow people to listen to positive things, a lot of energy is in them. They want to burn. Mm-hmm. So if you don't allow them to burn those things in positive something, of course, a lot of Yahoo something and terrible something over there. And so that is just my plea. I want to request for that, and I think I will take it up later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. This has been very interesting and very enjoyable.
Thank you.
That said, I want to bring up a question that is maybe a little bit uncomfortable. I hope it comes out right. So you've talked about strong women in your lives, and you've talked about wanting a less segregation of men and women in your religious practice than is customary in the majority of Muslim communities in the UK. And I hear all that. That said, I think in the first clip that you showed us, which I enjoyed all the music. I'm a very occasional tourist in the land of hip hop, but I enjoyed it very much. But there was that moment when the performer picks up the phone and goes, "That's wifey calling." I think that's the line, and chucks the phone over his shoulder. So there seems to be a wife in the picture. However, she seems to be very well stashed away. And I come from a strong Christian tradition, and part of the main reason why I'm alienated from it is precisely because it seems to me that it's a problem not of Islam, it's a problem of a lot of religions, but especially monotheist religions, that whatever their aims and ambitions, they tend to, in practice, marginalize women. It may not be what the male leaders want. It may not be how you interpret the religion, but it's something that somehow tends to happen. And I just wonder whether you can talk a little bit more about how that kind of issue figures in what you do.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So the scene you're referring to, I say, what's the beginning of the line? Wake up, pray my salah in the morning, check my phone, and it was indeed my wife calling. There was no symbolism of throwing the phone. The idea of getting the inflatable phone was just to provide a comedic element to the song. Later on in the song, you see Muhammad Yahya refer to getting money, and then you see a very large size check. So that particular scene of the throne didn't indicate anything like, you know, like I didn't care what my wife was saying. In fact, because the next line says, you know, I tell her, tell my baby to chill, you know, give her a few years, and I'm going to be making a lot of money for us. The issue of the marginalization of women is one I definitely agree with. Me myself, I've not really seen a way of how I can, as a musician, address that and attempt to resolve that, because I agree, going to Senegal, going to West Africa, how openly kind of, I don't want to use the word, but free mixing where women and men, and obviously it's very uncomfortable for me because, you know, being influenced with the Islam that I was influenced, I was like, well, aren't they meant to be like in a room somewhere, or, you know, why are they, you know, with the men? But seeing the beauty of Islam in West Africa and how it's not a big deal. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, if I went to like, you know, other areas of the country or even my own country, it's like, it's definitely not the case. So I have, in other music videos, shown Muslim women in my videos where I'm interacting with them, got a very negative backlash of that. But because I know the angle that they're coming from, they're trying to say, oh, based on the religion, this isn't allowed. Thank God I have people and teachers that can teach me that this actually isn't the way. This thing of, you know, putting the women away and making sure they're not seen, they're not heard of, is not the way of Islam. It's not the way that Muslims should Muslim men should be treating women. So my particular way that I'm going to try and address that is obviously the best way I can do is through music. So I've got loads of, you know, kind of music videos in the plans where, you know, Muslim women are involved and they're more put on the forefront as opposed to being hidden away and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if that particularly answers the question, but yeah, I didn't want any too much focus on the actual word of like me, check my phone, that's wifey calling and throwing the phone. It was more just kind of a play on words, yeah.
I just want to say something quickly and then I'll pass it to Amadou. But personally, because I just literally this morning, an article was released on a website called Sacred Footsteps that I had written. And the article was called Female Saints and Scholars of Senegal. And I wrote that article because in my interaction with this community in particular and with my travels to Senegal, I noticed that the position of women in the Sufi tradition and in the West African Islamic tradition was very, very different from what I'd experienced everywhere else in the world. So I started memorizing the Quran and studying the Quran with a female teacher, the daughter of Imam Sheikh Tijani Ali Cisse. She was the one that taught me how to read and write Arabic. And then traveling to Senegal, not only was I encouraged to visit male scholars, but I was also encouraged to visit female scholars. So like I remember the last time me and Omar went to Senegal, we were hosted by Professor Khan's mother, Sheikha Mariam. And if you see her, she's the de facto leader of all of the followers of Sheikh Ibrahim in Dakar. All of her younger brothers have to, you know, seek permission from her and seek her authority before they do things. And the current Imam, Imam Tijani Ali Cisse, he's only the Imam because his mother is the oldest daughter of Sheikh Ibrahim. It wasn't something that was passed on through the patriarchal lineage, but it was passed on through the legacy of his mother. And, you know, in the article, I gave examples of, for example, Sheikh Ruqayya, who was sent by her father to a community of men and women, over 5,000 of them that converted to Islam in Ghana, to teach them. He didn't send any of his sons or any male teachers, but he sent his daughter to go and teach them and be the community leader there. Sheikh Ruqayya is like a consultant for the Jimmy Carter Foundation. Another sister, Sheikh Khairi, has a 200,000 member NGO in Niger, and she's doing work there. So I feel like if the issue is with monotheistic religions and their way of dealing with women, obviously that's going to be very different to, you know, a modern contemporary interpretation of gender interaction. But I do feel like the community is very, very progressive in comparison to many other Muslim communities and Islamic communities that I've had the experience of being involved in. And I do feel like women are not marginalized. They're very much from my experience of West African Islam, in West Africa, women are not marginalized and they are encouraged, and a lot of them are the backbone and the centers of their communities where they are, especially in comparison to a lot of the men. Like in Dakar, Professor Khan's mother, Sheikh Ruqayya, she's the one that hosts the Eid prayers in her house. She's the one that has taught thousands of men and women the Quran. There are many Quranic schools that were established by men who were her students and memorized the Quran with her. So I do feel like it's not as black and white, or it's not as oppressive as a lot of other communities. And I'll pass on to Amadou to see what he has to say.
For the time.
For the time? Oh, yeah.
Our distinguished guests will be with us for tonight and tomorrow. Can ask some further questions. Just add that Hip Hop Hijabis was the Al Jazeera documentary of women. It's his, Muhammad Yahya's wife and another sister. So it's not just men also involved in these kind of cultural expressions too. That's important to point out. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a quick break so they can check their microphones, get set up. And what do you need? 5-10 minutes?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.